Woodworking can be a dangerous hobby. Lots of our tools have sharp spinning teeth that are driven by powerful motors. You can be seriously injured in the blink of an eye if you use these things improperly. But most of our tools can be made much safer with the proper safety accessories. For example, riving knives and splitters and blade guards can dramatically reduce your chance of table saw injury. Push blocks and featherboards can make your router table a lot safer. Of course, you have to use these safety devices for them to work. But some tools are just inherently dangerous, and an argument could be made for the angle grinder as being the most dangerous tool in many workshops, particularly a woodworking shop where it may be used for carving as well as grinding, cutting, and buffing. A month ago, I nearly lost 4 fingers to this thing, and I got it on film. No, I'm not going to show it cutting into me. If you want to see blood and gore, watch yesterday's vlog where I take you through the whole experience and we have some pictures on there. I'll put a link to it at the end of this video right up on the screen at the very end. But today we're going to get more technical. We're going to examine the seconds leading up to the accident to determine its cause and compare that to what we know or should know about the functions of an angle grinder. And by doing this, try to save you from an injury of your own, whether you're carving, cutting, or whatever you're doing with your grinder. So first, let's discuss blade quadrants. An angle grinder is a powerful tool, and when the spinning disc is engaged with the material that you're cutting, it will pull in the opposite direction of that spin. It's important to understand that the direction of that pull can change in an instant. So imagine you're carving or grinding with the surface of the disc. If you're using the top portion, the tool will pull to the left. You'll be using your arm muscles to counteract that pull because you want to keep control of the tool. But if you tip the grinder so the bottom half of the disc touches instead of the top, the tool will instantly pull in the opposite direction. And if you're not expecting that, or if you don't have a good grip, you can lose control. This tool can literally pull in any direction at any time if you aren't careful what quadrant or quarter section of the blade you're working with. And it can be challenging, especially when carving wood like I do, to maintain a consistent tool angle so you can control precisely what quadrant is on the wood. The same thing may be the case with grinding. It gets worse when you're working on a concave surface. If you are coming downhill using the tip of the disc and the bottom of the disc catches on the uphill portion, you could be in trouble. Another way you could lose control is if you pinch the wheel inside a curve. This can happen if you're using the edge to make a plunging cut, such as to trim something shorter or to cut a notch in something. Sometimes you may remove a lot of material from an area by making a bunch of cuts right next to each other. If you twist or turn the tool or tilt it while the blade is in that curve, it may bind and violently kick back at you. Finally, clothing can be a hazard if it's loose fitting. If a wire wheel, for example, catches your shirt or your jacket, the tool can climb right up your chest towards your face. And you can imagine what could happen if long hair or loose shirt sleeves get caught around that arbor. All of these situations can lead to severe abrasions, cuts, amputation, even death. I'm not exaggerating. An angle grinder can flat out kill you. Consider Dennis's example. He was carving a bowl with an angle grinder and a chainsaw type cutter just like this one. According to his friend, the instant Dennis touched the cutter to the bowl, the grinder violently jumped out of his right hand, struck his left hand, and then surged upward, striking him under the chin. Then it powered around his neck to just below his right ear. He was airlifted to the hospital, where he required hours of surgery to reconnect tendons and ligaments. In some places, the knuckles and bone were ground to powder. There just was no usable fragments existing. The cut on his neck was more than 2 inches deep. It missed his jugular vein by just 2 millimeters, and miraculously it skipped over his carotid artery before it dug back in and continued to cut to the ear. It took hundreds of stitches to close him up. This tool almost killed him. Now, Dennis admits that he didn't have a proper two-handed grip on the tool, but this same tool and cutter got me, and I had a good two-handed grip. As soon as I can operate a wrench again, this cutter is going in the trash. But while some blades are more dangerous than others, the nature of the grinder itself may have been a factor in the accident as well. So let's have a closer look. I'm making what's called a raking cut. I'm dragging the tool across the surface of the wood when it violently gets yanked from my hands, spins towards me, and cuts across 3 fingers and my thumb. So what happened? What could I have done differently? First, let's talk about the blade guard. These are adjustable, and I had mine covering the bottom half of the blade. That's actually a common location. In fact, most manufacturers consider that the default location. That's where it comes when they ship this tool. This was a new grinder I was using. I had not changed the position of the blade guard. But it's also a common practice to turn the guard to the side where your handle is, so that if the tool kicks in that direction, the guard, instead of the blade, may hit your hand. And I will say, as a general rule, you should turn your blade guard to the handle side. It will save you more times than not, at least in power carving. Unfortunately, though, in my case, it wouldn't have mattered, because it wasn't the side of the blade that got me. The grinder spun around and got me with the top of the blade. There was no way the blade guard could have been positioned to protect me from the top of the blade, because if you put the guard up there, you can't use the tool. So while a blade guard will help in a lot of cases, and you should never work without one, it's just, there's no sure thing when it comes to an angle grinder. Now, what about the side handle? Most grinders allow you to move it from one side to the other, so you can use your right or your left hand. If I had moved mine to the other side, since it kicked this way, I may not have gotten this hand at all, but I would have gotten my stomach, because the only thing that stopped that grinder from wrapping all the way around and digging into my gut was the handle caught me in the midsection. And reversing the handle to that side would only protect me if the tool kicks to the left. As I said, it can also kick to the right, depending on the part of the disc that grabs into the wood or metal or whatever you're working on. Now let's consider how I was holding the tool in relation to my body. I've got my arms extended and the tool parallel to my midsection. This position isn't optimal, but unfortunately the nature of power carving often requires the grinder to be extended and turned in lots of different positions as you sculpt an object. However, there is no doubt that it is safer to hold the tool perpendicular to your body at waist level with the base at your hip. This grip gives you a lot of control, and I highly recommend it if at all possible. Of course, I'm also wearing my safety gear. I got my leather gloves, my apron, face shield, hearing protection. I would not recommend ever using an angle grinder without that stuff. So was this operator error, or was it just a freak accident with an angle grinder? The evidence seems to point to the latter more than the former. While I'm carving in a valley, only the tip of the blade was in contact with the wood, so there was no sudden change in direction of pull. The blade guard's not turned to the side handle, but it wouldn't have stopped the top of the blade from hitting me in this case. I'm not fully supporting the grinder at my hip, but I still have a solid grip, and honestly, this kickback was so violent that tool was going wherever it wanted, no matter how well I held it. The answer is clear if we slow things down. I'm dragging the top of the blade across the wood, skimming the surface, and at the end of the cut, I start to move forward for another stroke before I lift the tool fully clear of the wood. The front of the cutter catches in the wood where it digs in, and those really aggressive chainsaw teeth just got a really good grip and ripped the grinder from my hands. It's the equivalent of dragging your toe to take a step and tripping. The blade guard, the side handle, my stance, the concave shape of the wood, none of that was a factor in this case. I simply fell victim to a freak accident that was made much worse by the aggressive, flesh-shredding teeth on this chainsaw blade. So the moral of the story is accidents can happen to everyone, but some tools are more dangerous than others, and perhaps none are more prone to freak accidents than the angle grinder. You should not add accessories that make it more dangerous, and you should learn how to use it properly in general. Your life may depend on it. There are several really good videos on YouTube, so take like a half hour right now and search angle grinder safety. See you next time. MyWoodcutters.com is the sort of small business I like to support. Stefan is a great guy, and he can find you knives and cutters for almost any joiner, planer, shaper, or molding machine. And his are the best prices if you're planning to upgrade to a helical carbide cutter head. Please use the link below this video to check with him before you buy somewhere else. Some small businesses are just worth supporting. Wait, don't go yet. If you're new here, please subscribe and remember to ring the bell. I would really appreciate that. Give us a thumbs up, or better yet, leave us a comment. I always read them. And be sure to check out the latest issue of Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. It's always packed with tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker.